Hollow verbs are so called because the middle root letter is either Yod or Vav. And so because the middle root letter is a Yod or Vav, and these consonants sometimes can be pushed away or even lose their consonantal character, then we call it hollow because of the nature. Now these are found in the dictionary under their infinitive construct form, a little bit unusual rather than the perfect 3ms. And so here's some examples. Here we have from cum, to arise, we have kam, he arose. We can see that the middle root letter has dropped out, so because it's hollow, leaving us just the pe and the lamed, or the first and the third root letters. In the imperfect, there we have the vav stays in as a shurik, yakum, he will arise. However, it's apocryphated in the vav consecutive imperfect form, and he arose. And we see similarly with some of the other verbs, like seem, to put or to place, or bow, to come, or moot, to die. And we can see that the perfect form, these are hollow, the middle root letter drops out. In the imperfect form, the middle root letter is there, and it stays, but it apocryphates or drops out in the vav consecutive imperfect. So this takes a little getting used to, but it's especially important to memorize our vocabulary so that we can recognize this phenomenon when it happens. And in the common words, knowing the vocabulary solves most of our difficulties for parsing. It's worth thinking through the different stems, like nifal, for the hollow words, and in the perfect, no big surprises for a word like kun, to establish. It was established. We can see the nun from the nifal, the stem, and all is well. However, in the case of the imperfect, or in the case of the vav consecutive imperfect, just have to remember our normal idea that the nun assimilates. So in this case, the dagesh forte within the kaf shows us that it will be established, or and he established, in the case of the imperfect and vav consecutive imperfect. Now we have here not PL but polel, and the reason it's put this way is because the lamed letter reproduces under certain circumstances in the stem. So it's not a PL, we call it a polel, again based off of the paradigm word pa'al and what would happen in that case. So if we take the word kun again, to establish, in the polel, we'll notice that the perfect form reduplicates the lamed letter, the nun, so that we have konein, or in the imperfect, yikonein, and in the vav consecutive imperfect, vayachonein. And we can see that it's the polel because of the expected shva under the prefix pronoun. And finally, let's think about the hiphil for a minute, and here we'll use the word kum, to stand or rise. And in the perfect, we have the he from the stem, also have the hirik yod, hekim, he caused to arise. And in the imperfect, we have a little bit more of a challenge here because we don't have our normal indicator of tak under the prefix pronoun. We have a kamatz. But in the case of the imperfect, we do have the hirik yod, which shows us yakim. This is in the hiphil. He will cause to arise. And again, another challenge in the vav consecutive imperfect, vayakim, because we do not have the talk that we would expect, and the middle letters are apocryphated. So the hiphil can cause us some challenges, and we have to think through this as we get into our reading and parsing. Let's compare a couple situations. Genesis 38:11. Ki amar pen yamut, gam hu ke'echav, vatelech temar, vateshav bet aviha. This verse offers perhaps a self-deliberation of Judah, and he reasons, for he said, lest he die, even he like his brothers, or also he like his brothers. And so Tamar, she went and she lived in the house of her father. The verb yamut, this comes from mem, vav, tav, and we have here a kal, imperfect, 3ms. And so we have, unless he will die. And so in this case, in the imperfect, the middle root letter, vav, remains as a shurek. We'll compare this to Genesis 4:8. Vayakam Cain el Hevel, achiv vayacharegehu. And the subject is Cain, and Cain rose up against Abel, his brother, and he killed him. Vayakam comes from kof, vav, mem, to arise. And in this case, we have kal, vav consecutive, imperfect, 3ms. So in both of these verbs, the middle root letter would be a vav normally, mut or kum. However, in the case of the imperfect, it remains in its full form, yamut, but in the vav consecutive imperfect, it apocryphates, and we see the hollow nature of the root, and he arose. We'll have another comparison beginning with Ezra 7:10. Ki Ezra hechin levavo lidrosh et Torah Hashem v'la'asot. This verse offers a commentary explanation by the narrator. For Ezra established in his heart to pursue the Torah of the Lord and to do it. The verb chehin comes from kaf, vav, nun, and in this case we have a hiphil. And we can see this both by the hey of the stem, but also the II-Yod within this verb, hechin. So this is a hiphil perfect, 3ms, and he caused to establish. And we'll compare this to Deuteronomy 31:23. Vayitzav et Yehoshua ata tavi et bnei Yisrael el haaretz. Moses is the subject, and he commanded Joshua, and he said, you will bring the sons of Israel to the land. The verb tavi comes from the root beit, vav, aleph, bo, to come. In this case, we have the hiphil stem and the imperfect form II-MS. And so we can see that this is in the hiphil because of the II-Yod. So it's in the hiphil, it's not hollow in either of these cases, but we can see that the hiphil causes the II-Yod to keep a middle vowel. And the same is true whether it's an imperfect or, a perfect, or whether it's an imperfect for the hiphil. I want to look at another form, example of a different form of a hollow from Psalm 118:26. Baruch haba b'shem Hashem. Blessed is the one who comes in the name of the Lord. Haba comes from beit, vav, aleph, to come. In this case, we have a kal, participle, masculine singular, and we can see that the participle is used as a noun because it has an article on the front, the one who comes. So the participle of the hollow verb also functions in the hollow way, leaving only the first and the third root letters. One final example of the hollow from Psalm 8. Ki ereh yareach v'chochavim asher konanta. When, so ki in the temporal sense of when I look or I see the moon and the stars which you have established. Konanta comes from the root kaf, vav, nun, to establish, kun. And in this case, we have the polel form, the polel root, and it's in the perfect form, II-MS. And there's a paragogic he, perhaps just stylistically for the poetry here. So in this case, the phenomenon of the hollow in the polel form, we have the third root letter doubles. So we have konanta in the polel form. A little bit unusual, but something to get used to with the hollow verbs.